Thanks for watching the Calvary Briefing. Today is Thursday, June 11th, 2020. Several weeks ago, I told you that one of the reasons that I do these briefings is to speak to myself and to teach myself. And I wanted to share with you today some things that have helped me over the last several months. These are uncertain times. There are events that are happening in our world that seem to happen at a moment's notice. As we've been under quarantine, that came up in a 72-hour period here in Colorado. And as things are opening up, that also comes quickly. There are things that come over the news media about things that are related to what we should do about the coronavirus. There are those that say masks are necessary, and some that say masks are not necessary, and some that are saying different things about some of the models that are out there. And so with these events happening one right after the other and happening so quickly, like many of you, I have found myself occasionally kind of anxious. I also find that I think that I am a fixer. I believe that when there are things that are happening that are wrong, that I have the ability to fix them. And so the combination of worldwide events happening helter-skelter and my inner desire and my inner belief that I'm a fixer creates a problem with anxiety. And I have found some help from a couple of Christian counselors out of an organization in Pennsylvania. David Powlison and Ed Welch have written a lot of books, and they have helped me deeply. And one of the surprising things that has helped me is a small chapter in the book of Psalms. And it is a psalm that I have read many, many times, and I've just kind of skipped over. And I wanted to share with you some things that Ed Welch and David Powlison have shared with me about Psalm 131. Only 3 verses in the psalm. Verse 1, O Lord, my heart is not lifted up, my eyes are not raised too high. I do not occupy myself with things too great and too marvelous for me. This psalm begins in humility. This psalm begins with the understanding that the psalmist is not God. Only God is God. I have no idea how to put a star in the right place. Do you? God put the stars in place. God spoke our world into existence. We are created in the image of God, but we are weak and we are limited. I often think of Matthew 6, verses 25 to 34. Jesus reminds us to look at birds, flowers, and grass, and to tell us that those things are taken care of by our Heavenly Father. And if our Heavenly Father takes care of those things, He will certainly take care of us. We are human and we are limited, and that ought to throw us to a point of humility. My heart is not lifted up. My eyes are not raised too high. Well, verse 2 says this, But I've calmed and quieted my soul, like a weaned child with its mother. Like a weaned child is my soul within me. God draws us to a picture of a young child with his or her mother. This child is well cared for and has everything needed and can rest in his or her mom's arms. There's no crying or squirming or concerns about tomorrow. The child can rest. Once again, there is humility here. The child is very small and the mother is very big and very trustworthy. Ed Welch of the Christian counseling organization that I mentioned earlier points out something very important here. He goes to the account of Mary and Martha in the New Testament in Luke chapter 10. And you might remember that as Jesus came into a home, Mary and Martha were there, and they were sisters. And Martha served and was distracted while Mary rested at the feet of Jesus. Mary was the child resting in her mother's arms, while Martha was the fixer. And Jesus said that it was Mary who had it right here. I have calmed and quieted my soul. Like a weaned child with its mother, like a weaned child is my soul within me. Well, this psalm is almost over. There's only one verse left. Verse 3. O Israel, hope in the Lord from this time forth and forevermore. This psalm ends appropriately. Having found rest for myself, I now invite others to join me in this rest that I found. And so the call goes out to Israel in the book of Psalms, and the call goes out from me to you. When our faith, rest, and hope are in God, we want it for others. You heard the word hope in this verse. Hope is a prediction that God will be with you and you can rest. You don't need to fix everything, and you can't fix everything. Well, in studying this short chapter, I am shocked that I've skipped over it most of my life and not seen the deeper meaning. I try to remember that anxiety and fixing are not usually areas of life that we can just stop doing. But this psalm at least draws my attention to the problem with anxiety and fixing, and at least shows me a goal that I ought to have for my life. Don't be discouraged that this issue in your life is not immediately something that goes away. I would challenge you today, what is one thing that you can do to live out Psalm 131? Maybe it's as simple as thinking about a child, comfortable, safe, and secure in his or her mother's arms. And maybe, after picturing that in your mind, going to God in prayer, maybe it's as simple as starting there. Brothers and sisters, from this time forth and forevermore, hope in the Lord.